Consistent effort compounds over time. How many of us have heard that quote? I remember I learned that quote at a young age. I remember in high school, even growing up, like younger than high school, basketball was my thing. Loved playing basketball. Grew up playing baseball and like football and all that, but basketball was my true love. And we had a local YMCA in the town that I grew up in. And I'd go there like 3, 4 times a week and I would practice, right? I'm playing basketball. My hoopers know I'm getting shots up. I'm working on my ball handling. And every time I was there was a coach who was training kids. He was training other kids. And I looked over and they were working hard. And I remember I asked the coach one time and I'm like, hey, coach, what do I have to do to get better? Like, I want to improve. And he asked me a question. He said, how often are you coming to the gym? And I said, hey, coach, I'm coming like 3, 4 times a week. And I was kind of like proud about that. I was excited. I'm coming 3, 4 times a week. I'm doing my thing. And he said, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, I'm here 6, 7 days a week. And these kids are here 6, 7 days a week training with me. He goes, so if they're training 6, 7 days a week and they're training hard and you're training 3, 4 times a week, who do you think will have the better outcome in the end? And with that, I understood. I get what you're saying. I was like, Roger that. I understand what you're saying. And so consistent effort compounds over time. But this is also where he said to me and where I learned the principle of it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great, because I would go to the gym 3, maybe 4 times a week and I'm practicing, I'm getting shots up and I'm doing what I got to do. But these kids are there 6, 7 days a week and they're putting in the work. So over the course of a year or 6 months, they're going to reap those benefits of that consistency over time. And so it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. This principle, though, it applies to every aspect of life. It's not just for sports, it's not just for, fitness, but it does apply to those things. For example, you can have a person who goes to the gym, say once a week, and they hit every body part. Like they're doing shoulders, they're doing legs, they're doing bench press, everything. And they're maxing out on everything. Number one, they might get injured. But number two, they're not going to reap long-term benefits from that. Now compare that to the person who goes to the gym consistently 4, 5, 6 times a week and say they only go for 30 minutes a week or they go for 30 minutes a week. Even if it's just walking on the treadmill, doing a couple push-ups, whatever it is, they're going to reap those benefits over time as opposed to the person who just goes to the gym 1 time a week and is maxing out on everything. I remember having a conversation with a mentee of mine and he was sharing how he's going to start this new business venture. And I said, word, like that's cool. Run it. I think it's great. Make the investment in yourself, take the risk, do it. And he made 3 social media posts and then that was it. And I asked him, I was like, hey, bro, I'm not seeing any of your content. And what he said was like, yeah, I'm posting here and there, but it's just a lot of work. And so that's where that's where people, those who achieve their goals, that's where they separate themselves from those who don't, is the ones who achieve their goals are the ones who are consistent as opposed to the ones who are occasionally consistent or occasionally post on their socials or do whatever that thing is specific to what their goals are. I think about in business, right? Or in sales, the person who consistently makes, say, 15 calls a day, as opposed to the one salesperson who makes 1 sales call a day, but makes 50 calls. The person over time who's doing it consistently will most likely reap the benefits from that, as opposed to someone who's just doing it occasionally. And so being consistently good as opposed to occasionally great, even with podcasting and starting a podcast, I thought it was crazy, right? I Googled I Googled how many episodes do people do for their podcast before they quit? And do you know what that number is? 3. 3 episodes. So 90% of podcasters don't go past 3 episodes. That's crazy. So now think about the podcasts that are doing really well. They didn't just start yesterday. Many of them have been doing it for multiple years before they reaped any benefits. And so it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. And so this is a principle that, again, it can apply to all areas of life. I know with my wife, right? For those who are married or those who are in a relationship, you hear about the importance of date nights, right? It's important to continue to date your wife, or continue, for the ladies, continue to date your husband. And so I could plan this one huge date, right, for the year, dinner, roses, whatever, right, the whole nine. But if I'm only doing that once a year, as opposed to if I do it on a weekly basis, every 2 weeks, once a month, that consistency is going to help our marriage grow and our relationship grow, not just doing it once a year. And so it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. So my hope for you in this podcast, with this episode, is that you apply that principle in all aspects of your life. Whatever that thing is that you're procrastinating from, right? For myself, I'll give you an example, is even with the podcast. I This is something I've been wanting to do for like 2 years. And what prevented me from doing it was the fact that I thought it had to be this great, I thought it had to be the best podcast in terms of production out there just for me to start. And it wasn't until I linked up with my amazing videographer who helped make this dream come true. But I felt like it had to be perfect before I started, right? I had to learn what microphone to use, what camera to use, all these different things. And then I had to learn how to use them because I thought that everything had to be great. But had I just started, I would have gotten my reps in. I would have learned how to use the equipment. I would have, right? So if I were just consistent, if I, number one, start, but number two, be consistent, and then you'll see the benefits from that. So thank you guys for tuning in. And just remember, it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. It's your boy Brandon, driven by growth. See you next time.